Hello, everybody. Welcome to Medicine and Science on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Pallavita. I will be your host for today. And we're going to have some very interesting comments relating to the American medical leadership that exists right now. I'm going to start with mine. Then, of course, we're going to move over to Dr. Patton. This is going to talk about the nominee for Surgeon General of the United States of America. But this person is right now the head of CDC in America. I'm going to say America because we broadcast all over the world. And for our people in China and Bangladesh, you're going to find this interesting. Okay, remember, CDC stands for the United States Center of Disease Control. So who would you nominate, or who is the current head of CDC? This person went to Yale University, which is a good university, but did this person receive a degree in science? No, a bachelor's degree in humanities. Okay. Went on to serve as a general manager of the Yale Precision Marching Band. Now, marching bands are very important, but does that have anything to do with Center of Disease Control? How does that qualify you? Your marching band. What do you know about disease control? I don't know. They went to study at the University of Chicago, receiving a Master's of Arts degree in humanities. Okay, once again, having nothing to do with disease control. But now, this person magically is the head of the CDC in America. Seriously, it shows anybody can become head of any department in the United States, even though you're totally not qualified. So with that, we're going to bring in Dr. Michael Patton, who is qualified. He's actually board certified in internal medicine. He's a medical doctor, and he actually practices medicine, unlike the current head of the CDC, who seems to me, when I was reading his CV, the biggest thing he did was he's head of a marching band. Only in America can we have this particular issue. Only in America. So I'm sure our people in Europe, where I live, will find this fascinating, and our people in China and India will find it fascinating, and our people who follow us in Asia will find this fascinating. But Dr. Patton it's not only fascinating, it's almost an embarrassment. It's not making America great again. It's making America embarrassing again. You have a person whose biggest claim to fame was he headed a marching band, who's head of CDC. And now you have another person who looks like they're going to be the Surgeon General, who is not much better, if not worse. So tell us what's going on in your country. I'm glad I'm in Spain. I really feel sorry for the Americans because the leadership really is very poor.
Well, good morning, Nick. Thank you for the invitation to join, and thank you to all the audience. It's really sad. I mean, you can make a lot of jokes about it, but it's really sad. Trump destroys everything he touches, and the area of my life that resonates closely for me is healthcare, public health, public policy regarding infectious diseases and science and medicine. And, Trump is really he's destroying he and his appointees are basically destroying CDC and ruining all of what the United States has accomplished in the world of science and medicine. The latest insult here is the nomination of Dr. Casey Means for United States Surgeon General. Now, her confirmation hearing is coming up soon. I believe it's this week or next week. And, almost certainly she's going to be confirmed. She will be the next Surgeon General. And it is very important to understand who Casey Means is and why she's not a good choice. The Surgeon General is a very important position. That's kind of the highest ranking physician in the country, and has the ability to influence policy and influence the public on many areas of health. For example, it was Dr. C. Everett Koop, Surgeon General, who really pushed the anti-tobacco movement in this country. And now tobacco, the vast majority of people no longer smoke because of Dr. Koop and what he accomplished. A Surgeon General should have top-tier elite credentials, faculty appointment, established record of teaching, practice, research, leadership at very high levels. And that's not what we have in the current nominee. So in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Casey Means. So first of all, I did a Substack on her a couple of weeks ago where I did an AI-enabled review of her CV, looking for where her background is, and I summarized all of that. And then a couple of days ago, Dr. David Gorski, who is a very highly respected, very well-known surgical oncologist who writes for Science-Based Medicine, did a really deep dive on her background as well, including her time at OHSU and her conversion to woo-woo medicine. So let me just briefly tell you a little bit about who between the two articles, mine and Dr. Gorski's, you got everything you need to know about Dr. Casey Means. First of all, she grew up in affluence, Washington, D.C. area. Her father was a government employee, private schools, very smart. Very, engaging young woman, went to Stanford undergrad, Stanford Medical School, did an internship, a surgical internship, and then went off to OHSU, an organization where I'm familiar because I was a clinical assistant professor of medicine at OHSU from 2003 to 2005. And I have a lot of respect for OHSU. It's an elite organization. Well, she started her ear, nose, and throat surgery, head and neck surgery, otolaryngology residency at OHSU, but curiously quit just a few months before she finished, which is very, very unusual. If someone's going to quit a residency, it's usually in the first year because that's the most demanding year, especially in surgery. ENT is a 5-year program altogether, and to quit just a few months before the end is very odd. It just all she had to do was hang on a few more months, and she would have been a board eligible ear, nose, and throat surgeon. That's a very hard specialty. I would never want to do that, but it's very odd how she left that. Well, Dr. Gorski went into really excellent detail. He found out that according to all her friends who were in the program, she just couldn't handle the stress. It was much too intense for her. She writes in her website that she became sensitized to and aware of functional medicine, which I'll talk about in a minute, when her mom got sick and died of pancreatic cancer. And she wrote about pancreatic cancer being a preventable metabolic disease, and how she came to realize that conventional medicine was worthless. And so she adopted functional medicine, which is kind of woo-woo medicine on steroids. She left the program at OHSU just months before she would have finished, and there will therefore never be a fully trained physician, never be board eligible, or certainly not board certified because she's not even board eligible. And she went on and opened up a practice in functional medicine, and then started a company called Levels. And what she did, and what folks like this do, is they just draw all these blood chemistry. They charge you a fortune. This is all cash because none of this is covered by insurance. They charge you a fortune. You get 100 blood tests. Who knows, the significance of most of these blood tests. And then they talk to you about lifestyle and getting good rest and exercise and eating right and having good energy. She wrote a book called Good Energy and how that would, prevent disease and so forth. It's really kind of a scam to just basically charge people for doing a lot of unnecessary lab work. The other thing she got into was pushing for everybody to use, or most everybody to use, continuous glucose monitors. Continuous glucose monitoring is used in diabetics, especially brittle diabetics who are uncontrolled, difficult to control with high spikes and so forth. And so that's what they're approved for. That's what the device is approved for. They're quite expensive, and it requires prior authorization from your insurance. Well, Dr. Means was pushing the use of glucose monitors for everybody and trying to attribute some significance to the minute-to-minute fluctuation in blood sugar in non-diabetics. A normal person, your blood sugar might be 70 in the morning and then go up to 80, or maybe then go down to 65, then go up to 100 during all of which are normal. But they kind of try to attribute some significance to these daily fluctuations, minute-to-minute fluctuations of blood sugar, which are normal physiologically. And just not talking about diabetics. This is people who are not diabetic. So some of what she does is really, really weird. Well, then it gets very interesting. Within a few years of leaving her residency, she got involved with claims that she founded, along with her brother, a company that does a really interesting thing. They take devices like continuous glucose monitors and red light therapy and vitamins and herbs and dietary stuff and running shoes and all kinds of things. And then they provide letters of medical necessity so that these items can be billed to your flexible spending account and your healthcare savings account and become deductible expenses. So in that way, they're able, I mean, if you can get a continuous glucose monitor approved by your flexible spending FSA and HSA, then you can sell these things to a lot of people. And that's exactly what she has done with this company that she founded. So they're basically pushing like red light therapy, which has no real sound basis in science, and other kinds of things, basically woo-woo medicine, as by certifying it as with letters of medical necessity. They get it approved by the FSA, so they can basically milk these FSA, HSA funds, which are intended for bona fide medical needs according to IRS rules. It's kind of an ethically challenged but interesting business arrangement, and it's ongoing now. And so within just a few years, she's only been out of her residency about 5 or 6 years. Within a few years, she's now a multimillionaire. Estimated net worth is in excess of $5 million. She came to the attention of Joe Rogan. She and her brother, because she wrote this book called Good Energy, she got on Joe Rogan. That launched her into fame. Apparently, in the world of quackery, if you want to get famous, you go on the Joe Rogan show, and that makes you famous. And now she got hooked up with Robert Kennedy. He's talking all about these wearable devices like, Apple Watches that check your pulse and continuous glucose monitors, those kinds of things. We have a lot of technology now to monitor physiologic function, some of which is useful, but some of it is just, not unnecessary data. In any case, that's kind of what she is doing. And now she's become the nominee for Surgeon General. Let me tell you why she's not qualified. First of all, the Surgeon General should be an elite physician. She's not even fully trained. She is not board certified. She's not board eligible. She left her residency before she finished her training, and she has minimal clinical experience outside of a residency program. She's not been a faculty member. She is not an elite academic physician in any way, shape, or form. She's basically a functional medicine doctor who has basically been pushing, silly nonsense. Functional medicine is a combination of common sense, eat right, exercise, and nonsense, good energy. So she's not the appropriate candidate for Surgeon General. Her credentials are quite pedestrian, really. I mean, she went to a good medical school, but she stopped her training. She doesn't really have the kind of experience, education, training, and stature of a Surgeon General. She's kind of a bottom dweller in that sense from her resume point of view. The other thing is that besides being incompletely trained, she's involved with functional medicine, which is really not a recognized medical specialty. Yes, they've created their own board. Now there's a board of functional medicine. It's not a specialty that's recognized by the American Board of Medical Specialties. It's a pseudoscience, nonsense, and some common sense, and a lot of silliness. I listened to a lecture from a functional medicine doctor a couple of weeks ago, and an hour of hearing, yes, exercise, eat right, get good sleep, and manage your stress. Like, we didn't know this already. And then finally, her involvement with companies and this business about providing letters of medical necessity for items that would not previously have been considered medically necessary, and now getting those approved for purchase, for reimbursement to her company for glucose monitors and other things for which there's really not appropriate. This, I think, is a misuse of what the intent was of the rules of an FSA and an HSA, which is to cover medically necessary expenses for medical treatment, not sneakers or vitamins and minerals or red light therapy or continuous glucose monitors for people who are not diabetic. So I think that's kind of a scam, and it really borders on the illegal. And it's not fraud from a a Department of Justice OIG point of view because it doesn't involve Medicare. But it is, it is something that should be on the radar for IRS because I think it's a misuse of the IRS rules. So finally, one last comment I want to make is that she talked about pancreatic cancer being a preventable metabolic disease. People have to understand pancreatic cancer is a multifactorial disease. The largest reason for people to get pancreatic cancer is genetic. It's associated with certain mutations like the BRCA1 gene and like 6 or 7 other mutations. The risk of pancreatic cancer is genetically transmitted. Then there are some environmental factors like tobacco use, alcohol use, getting chronic pancreatitis from alcoholism, obesity, diabetes is a risk. So there is a metabolic, component to it. Like a lot of these woo-woo medicine types, there's always a little grain of truth to what they say, but it's out of proportion. By far and away, the thing about pancreatic cancer is that it's not a preventable metabolic disease. It's a genetic disease that is accelerated or triggered by certain environmental factors, the most important of which are tobacco, alcohol, chronic pancreatitis, obesity, diabetes. So anyhow, Casey Means is not a good choice for Surgeon General. I don't think she should be confirmed. She needs to be asked about her involvement with companies that do the letters of medical necessity. And she's just not the kind of stature of a physician that should be. And it's an insult to all the rest of us who finished our training.
So
her medical license to be inactive. She's not active.
I want to talk about the damage that a bad Surgeon General can do, and to find out. You look at Florida. There's this guy who's a fraud, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, and he and the governor DeSantis, call it the free state of Florida. We're free from vaccinations. You don't need to get vaccinated for COVID. You don't need to shut stuff down. And if you compare the death rate in Florida after vaccines became widely available to California and other states that are pro-vaccine, 80,000 people died in Florida from bad vaccine policies from COVID. So multiply that by, 20, 30, because, Florida is just one state out of 50. And this is due to, bad medical stands. And all right, another thing is Casey Means is right about one tiny thing. Pancreatic cancer is not exactly preventable, but you can catch it super early, but not by eating the right stuff, but with powerful modern medicine. The BRCA test. If you test positive for BRCA, then you get an MRI, regular. If you've got good enough insurance that they can take a look at your pancreas every year or two. The reason pancreatic cancer is so terrible is by the time it causes symptoms, you're at stage 4 and you're screwed. But if you catch it early using powerful modern medicine, it's treatable.
Pancreatic cancer is a difficult challenge, and the problem of screening everybody is, it's just not feasible or practical.
Right, you can't. You're going to get 100 wasted tests for every even borderline case. Like I get my abdomen scanned for other reasons, and they always take a look at my pancreas, and I have zits, I have cysts on my pancreas. So does my wife, and we're very concerned because her dad died of pancreatic, which is a terrible death. But if you look it up, 30% of people our age have zits, cysts on our pancreas, and less than 1% of them turn into something bad. So yeah, it's you get a lot of worry, you get a lot of unnecessary tests to catch one case of it.
Dr. Bradley, just really quickly, there's something that I saw on BBC that is worrying a lot of people, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this. But apparently, there is a persistent shortage of popular drugs that are affecting millions of patients worldwide. And folks are wondering about this because of the price of drugs. And it's not just here in the U.S., it's other places as well. So I just wanted your take on this, because this was a BBC report that just came out recently where a lot of people are finding it even difficult to get the prescriptions when they need the prescriptions, not even going on the fact that they want to put a warning on Tylenol.
Yeah, that's a good point. A kind of a different issue, but it is true that, and for years, we've been having difficulty getting enough of certain medications. And there are times when certain medications, even in the United States, is just not available, and you have to wait for manufacturers to produce more. And that's a very complicated question. But my sort of simple understanding of it is recognize what has happened to the pharmaceutical. The pharmaceutical industry is under attack, and they're not totally blameless in things. They do, marketing and overcharge and blah, blah, blah. But big pharma is a target of RFK and a target of these, functional medicine, woo-woo medicine, anti-vax people. They vilify big pharma. And, over a year, and big pharma has been sued. I remember I gave a lecture once. I was invited to give a lecture at, SmithKline's headquarters in Philadelphia. So I traveled there. I got off the wrong floor on the elevator. I got off at the 12th floor, so the 11th floor. And there's a legal department. And I walked in and they have an army of lawyers. And then I finally found my way to the right floor. And I said, you have a legal, they said, oh yeah, we have to employ dozens of lawyers just to deal with the constant litigation. So what has happened is many pharmaceutical companies were based in the United States. They've left. They've now gone to Europe because the regulatory environment and the litigious environment that we're in has driven them away, and it's made it more and more difficult for them to be able to meet the needs, of the people. So yes, we do see shortages of medications now from time to time, and it can be very disruptive. I've been in the hospital when we couldn't get a certain antibiotic or we couldn't get a certain other medication. You have to make do with something else until it becomes available. We shouldn't have this, but a lot of it is just due to the fact that we have vilified that entire industry.
Dr. Patmos, I did look on the Wikipedia page. It showed that your friend Dr. Means' medical license is inactive. Why would a medical doctor make their license inactive? What's the advantage of being inactive?
Well, I'm licensed in Oregon, and for a period of time, I made my license inactive when I wasn't located there, and this was before telemedicine, and I wasn't going to be practicing there. So the reason you make a license inactive is because it's a lot less money. When your license is active, it costs hundreds of dollars a year to maintain it. And if you make it inactive, then it saves you a lot of money. The problem is if you want to go back and make it reactivated, it's a big deal, a big process. I actually had to prove to the Oregon Medical Board that I was up to date and took courses and so forth. And that was quite a project. Not other states don't do that. I actually serve as a consultant to the Oregon Medical Board. So they're a very, very precise medical board. They are very careful and fastidious about who they allow to practice medicine in their state. But Dr. Means does have a license, but because now she's going to be Surgeon General, I guess she's made it inactive.
So we can look at the acting Surgeon General, who is a woman named Rear Admiral Denise Hinton, who she ran the Food and Drug Administration for 4 years, and she's a nurse. She's run big organizations. She seems perfectly competent as Surgeon General. So, and acting means she's not confirmed. She's just a placeholder, but she seems like a really good placeholder. It would be great if we could keep her in her position.
Yeah, I think having Dr. Means in this role is part of this overall taking of alternative medicine and installing it as the norm. I read a comment the other day from one of these alternative medicine people who said, they feel vindicated by this. So what they're doing, they're replacing sort of legitimate medical medicine and legitimate physicians with these alternative. It's basically the alternative medicine. Dr. Gorski was very clear in his piece. He refers to them as quacks. What they've done is they've taken the quacks and they put them in charge. So that's where we are now. We're in a situation now where the quacks are running the show. All of the physicians that are appointed in the Trump administration by Kennedy, none of them have appropriate credentials. Some of them have fabricated credentials. Dr. Bhattacharya, for example, he running the NIH has no internship, no residency, no fellowship, not board certified, not board eligible, no license to practice medicine, no clinical experience, and no training in molecular biology or hard lab research. He's running the NIH. So we see this across the board. There are people who do not have the right qualifications, in some cases even fraudulent qualifications, in important jobs. And they've basically replaced, they took out all the real experts, vilified them, turned the country against the real experts, and then put in the quacks.
Okay, I have another question, because I did look at Mr. O'Neill, who's currently the acting head of the CDC, Center for Disease Control. His claim to fame was he headed a marching band in Chicago. Counselor, tell me why somebody who headed a marching band in Chicago should be head of the CDC.
Well, first of all, in defense of marching bands, my daughter was on the marching band at the University of Nevada. I love marching bands. I always clap for them at halftime. Everybody else goes to get a hot dog. I clap for the marching band. But in any case, he's not qualified. He's there to do one thing and one thing only, and that is implement RFK's vision of what the CDC should be, which is a nullified organization that will not get in the way of Kennedy and his friend Aaron Siri, who want to sue and recover millions of dollars for all these alleged damages due to vaccines. They basically want to gut CDC, and because they don't believe in infectious diseases, which, oh, by the way, most diseases are infectious diseases. If you look around the world, what kills people is mostly infectious diseases. Yet they seem to think that infectious diseases are they don't even believe it in germ theory. So the United States is in big trouble.
And hundreds of thousands of people could die unnecessarily from bad policy. The quacks, like their basic stance is, if you live right, you eat right, you reduce stress, you won't get sick. That's not true. You may put it off for a few years, but everybody gets sick. And when you do, you fight it with modern medicine. Modern medicine gets you years of extra life. Frickin', eating fewer sandwiches doesn't work like that.
But right, Rick, if I played a trombone in a marching band, can't I get better?
I was the worst trombone player in my.
Apparently that doesn't work. Dr. Patmos, I read the article. I know this is slightly different, but is there two questions, and I know we're running out of time, but is there any alternative medicine that actually works? Because I had read a recent study that was saying that something that people are very much part of their daily breakfast is actually bad for them. Because there was an article that I read recently that said, don't eat so much of those boiled eggs, which a lot of people eat, because apparently boiled eggs are not good for you. So I was just wondering if you had heard anything about this latest study about boiled eggs.
I haven't seen that study, but what I can tell you is that, alternative medicine is a lot like, all these other areas of alternative. There's a little grain of truth, to it. Yes, there are some diseases that are triggered by chemical exposures and eating a bad diet, high fat diet, high processed food diets. Those aren't good things. But, that's not rocket science. That's common sense. What your great grandmother told you, eat a balanced diet, and have variety of fruits and vegetables and foods, and eat a little bit of everything. Eggs are, high in fat. Who's going to eat, a lot of eggs all the time? It's not good for you. Occasionally, an egg is fine, but you just have to have a variety of food.
We have an example of a guy, a national symbol of bad diet and very little exercise. And that's President Trump, who is 79 and has eaten like crap his whole life. And the only exercise he gets is some golf. Yet he thrives because he has the best medical care in the world. Saved him from a super bad case of COVID. He's got circulatory issues, but he could go another 10, 12 years, even with his bad habits.
And he's vaccinated. He just got boosted for
I know.
COVID. He just got vaccinated for influenza. He doesn't believe personally in the things this is all political for him. He's using this anti-vax, alternative woo-woo thing to gin up his base and to basically, engage his base of voters. He manipulates people with this stuff. He goes out, he goes to the doctor. He goes to great doctors at Walter Reed. He gets immunized. He got treated for COVID. So he doesn't, his actions don't match his words. His words are there to manipulate foolish voters who believe the things he says. Like he's a man of the Bible. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, we're running out of time, but I do want to thank Dr. Michael Patmos, who is board certified in internal medicine, and Rick Rosner, who's Emmy nominated, but also in the high IQ group, which unfortunately it looks like none of the people that are heading the health departments in the United States are there. I just don't want to get my medical advice from somebody who headed a marching band. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next week on Medicine Science on the Pod TV Network. Take care. Bye-bye.